This is the Balanced Advisor Podcast with Dr. Travis Perry, helping financial advisors like you achieve balance in their lives.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Balanced Advisor Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Travis Perry. Today we have with us Shauna Mace. Shauna is the head of practice management at SEI, where she and the team focus on helping advisors grow their business and gain scale so they have more time and energy to do what they do best, help their clients thrive. She's been in the industry for over 17 years at an RIA firm, a fast-growing asset management firm, and as a business owner, consultant, and coach prior to joining SEI. And she's always focused on helping others succeed. Shauna has been featured in a number of advisory-focused publications, such as Advisor Perspectives and Kitch's Nerd's Eye View, and is a frequent speaker for industry podcasts and conferences. Welcome, Shauna, to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we spoke a little bit in the pre-show about your background and what you've been doing to help advisors, but I'm going to let you tell the tale. How'd you get to this industry? Why financial advisors? And how'd you get up to SEI?
Yeah. So, I definitely, if you asked me 17 years ago, even 20 years ago, what do you see yourself doing? It would absolutely not be what I'm doing today. I went to Villanova and I was studying political science. And I realized about my heading into my junior year, end of sophomore year, that there wasn't actually any career I wanted to pursue related to political science. I didn't want to become an attorney. I didn't want to go into government. And so I figured out pretty quickly I need to make some sort of shift to set myself up to have a job when I graduate from school. And so I started taking marketing courses and business courses, and I really enjoyed them. And so when I graduated, luckily I had done my work because I was dead set on having a job right out of school. I had found an opportunity at an RIA firm that was based outside of Philadelphia. And it was a marketing role. So I figured this is great. It's a step in marketing. I'll pivot to another industry. This isn't necessarily for me. I'll pivot once I get some experience. Well, I ended up staying at the RIA firm for 8 years. I loved the people. I loved the business. I ended up being able to do a lot more than just marketing. By the time I left, I was running the day-to-day of the business and doing a lot of the development as well as marketing. And I just loved it. And I just couldn't at that point. I'm like, okay, there's so much more here. What I thought isn't what it is. There's so much I can do in this industry. And so I actually ended up leaving the RIA firm to go deeper in marketing. And I joined a very fast growing asset management firm based in Philly in a marketing role. And that just, again, like I couldn't have predicted, but zigzagged my way into all sorts of different non-marketing roles and ended up starting a consulting business. I guess it's been just over 2 years now as when I started the business right at the beginning of COVID, April 1st of 2020. I launched Inspire Growth, which was a growth consulting and coaching business for financial advisors. I was so excited to get back to working more closely with financial advisors, taking all the knowledge I had gained in marketing and sales and business strategy and helping apply that in their business and specifically in the RIA business, because that's where I grew up. I drank the Kool-Aid. I love the business. I believed in what they do for their clients. And it's interesting. We're going to be talking, about balance. So I grew the business very quickly, which was great. I mean, I should have. That was my background. And it grew and things happened the way that I planned them to happen. And I got to a point where I was at capacity. And I had to make a decision. What am I going to do? Am I going to scale with people? Am I going to scale with technology or figure out how to scale my advice? And an opportunity came up at SEI to run practice management there, to do a lot of the work I loved to do, and to actually get to build a product to figure out how to solve this problem for how do you scale advice. And that was really exciting to me. It was something that I was going to do myself. And I was just thrilled to be able to do it with a group of people that I believed in, that I really admired, and to be able to serve their 7,500 advisors. So it was just a really kind of, you couldn't have predicted it, just right time, right place, right time for me. And I've been at SEI in the head of practice management role for just about 7 or 8 months now. And it's been wonderful.
Timing is everything, as they say.
Yes.
And I totally get that. Like, it sounds like, it was perfectly set up with your experience and what you're doing now. What a great asset that you are to the company with all that marketing skill and practice management consulting that you've had. they're quite honestly lucky to have you. So it's great. I'm excited to dive into some of the topics today, which, we're talking about balance, but we're going to be talking about scaling a little bit, and scaling with balance, which is your wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. And it's absolutely something that I think we talked in the pre-show that some advisors are really scared to do. They're afraid to scale because they don't want to lose their sense of balance. So let's start there. What's your definition of balance?
Such a good question. Such a hard question. It's like asking, what's your definition of happiness? I've been thinking about this, and it's good that it's been kind of ruminating in my head, because it's made me even question some choices I make in my own life. But for me, balance is really about when the things that matter to you and to those who you care about around you can coexist in some harmonious way. And I recognize that those things that matter change over time. Some that's situational, and it's obviously about what you want, but it's also about what the people around you need and want to, whether it's your family or your business or your coworkers, or just, the responsibilities we have as adults. So yeah, it's really about achieving some sort of this harmony between the things that matter.
I love it. Yeah, I've heard so many different analogies, suggestions, definitions, but there is a harmony there. What we've come to find is that advisors, really anyone, but advisors specifically, we've interviewed hundreds of them, when they feel like, yes, I'm living my highest priorities, I'm actually utilizing time here, they feel balanced. It's not an equilibrium. It's not some sort of specific formula, but it's usually the top 3 or maybe 4 areas where, like, spiritual health, physical health, relationships. Those are the top 3 that we typically have found. When those are in balance, meaning they're giving time to them, they feel great. They feel like, yeah, I am balanced. Now the problem is on the flip side, if business is doing really bad, or if they're way out of whack with maybe some extended family they haven't seen in forever and ever and ever, some of the negative aspect, I don't usually talk about this on the podcast, but some of the negative aspect can pull them down and feel like they're getting pulled out of balance. So I like that you talk about a harmony, right? Because it's sort of a musical harmonious relationship between all these areas of our life. I appreciate that. That was great. So For you, what do you think is the hardest thing to achieve when you're trying to achieve your balance? And throw in whatever you were going to say there.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say was it is, I think there's the interplay, because frankly, there's few things we can control, right? What I've seen at least is, and with advisors and in achieving balance, when you can focus on and try your best to control the things that matter most to you, you tend to be able to create an environment where you can have some semblance of balance, based on your terms. But there's so much we can't control. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about. These things that impact us, impact the ones around us, our loved ones, our clients, that we have no control over. And I think, at the end of the day, what I find is you kind of have to focus on the things you can control and just live there and just recognize you can't control it all. And that's where, to me, this idea of focus, intentionality and focus is so important when it comes to growth and scale and maintaining balance.
Yeah. Great response. Focus, being present. Never before have we had such a challenge, right? Never before we're constantly being pulled out of balance, out of focus, out of intention in what we're doing. I mean, literally what I have to do to be on this podcast, I have to turn everything else off, just have my notes, just have your frame above, right below the camera so I can see you. And I take notes so that I can stay focused, because otherwise, our mind wants to drift. It wants to go. It's continually going on these different patterns. And listeners, if you're driving or running or whatever you're doing, listening to the podcast, sometimes you're not all the way focused on what we're saying, because our mind is moving at such a higher rate of thought process. So it is a constant battle. Is focus an issue for you, or do you find your Achilles heel is somewhere else?
Yeah, no, I'm like a laser focus. Like I'm very much into productivity. So I'm very, very intentional about each day, each week, each month. I mean, honest, it's what I teach, it's what I live. So no, for me, if anything, it's almost like sometimes I can be too focused. I've been called someone who's intensely focused, and not maybe and I mean, I think a positive way, but also there's, some negative aspects to that as well. My husband's like, why don't you answer my text? I'm like, well, I'm focusing on content right now, so I can't. But no, I think that for me, focus is not a problem because I know that that's what I need in order to do the things and achieve the things that matter to me.
Yeah, no, that's great. So you bring up a really good point, and that is like sometimes when we're laser focused, others maybe don't understand, right?
Yeah.
Even our own spouse, or maybe it's a family member. Shout out to mom. Whoever it is, it's like blowing up your phone, or maybe it's a coworker or a friend or someone who maybe doesn't understand our boundaries. I talked about this in a previous podcast about creating, kind of a castle with walls and a moat, and so that people know. Back in back in the day when we set up our empire, it was physical. Very like, oh yeah, I'd have to get past the moat. They'd have to lower the drawbridge, at the same time to get over the moat, get through the walls. The guards are going to show. Now it's pick up the phone and you can bug people that you've never met before. Like that's how we met on social media, right? Hey, thank you, LinkedIn. Right. But talk to us about this. Like, how do we help others understand our laser focus is for our good, our balance, not that, it's necessarily anything bad about them?
Well, certainly setting expectations. I met my husband my sophomore year at high school, so we've known each other a very long time, and he knows at this point he kind of knows my routine, so he knows when I'm in work mode, and he knows when I'm not. But yeah, I think setting expectations is a really important part of that. I think helping them I think also not just setting expectations, but helping others understand the benefit, why it matters. And it might be why it matters to them. It might be like, well, I'm going to be intensely focused and please don't interrupt me or reach out. I'm not going to respond for, 4 hours today, but no, when I come home, I'm going to be present. And so helping people understand the why behind it, I think is important part of not just setting expectations, but why it matters.
Yeah. And on the flip side, so I've seen this happen. I've seen it with advisors who I've trained, and I know you have too, but I've seen advisors say yes to everything. Like literally. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, of course. I'm going to be your best, blah, 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 blah. And before they know it, all of a sudden they have just dug themselves a huge hole, and it's hard to get out. What do you say to those who are super struggling with being the yes man or the yes woman?
Yeah. And I have seen that unfortunately a lot, and it comes from the best place. It comes from the best intentions of, I just want to impact as many people as possible. And what I say to them is typically, how is that going? How I don't tell them, I'm not going to say, well, it's not good for your business or not good for you or your team, but I usually try to take more of a coaching stance and ask the question of, well, how is that working out for you? How is that working for your clients? How is that working for your team? And oftentimes they're feeling the pain of that overextension. And so they recognize, well, it's not. And so I'm like, well, what are we going to do about it? So I think that's one of the things. It's like one of the reasons I started doing coaching is because I don't think most of us don't like to be told we're doing something wrong. But if we come to our own conclusion, that's a very different experience. So it typically starts with just exploring the impact and seeing how that's working, if it's working or not. If it's working, great. How is that going to work if you add 20 more clients? How is that going to work if your profitability isn't growing at that same rate? So I usually continue to go deeper on the questioning.
Yeah, I love it. You're such a coach. And that's an excellent thing to be. People need coaches. We need advisors to advisors. And that's, the big benefit. But also you're right about their intention. Advisors come to this industry because they want to help. They're helpers. But they get paid really well to do this. Like this is I think the most lucrative helping profession on the planet. We can look at lots of others in comparisons to school teacher, therapist, whatever, but advisors get paid really well to do this. So a lot of times what I've seen is they get stuck in this workaholic trap where they're helping their clients and they neglect their own stuff, and they neglect, what's really keeping them balanced. And I know you've seen it because you're a specialist with practice management. You're helping inside SEI, but you've also helped outside as a consultant and been in other, firms. So what have you seen in the industry that are probably causing advisors to lose their balance or not ever gain that sense of balance?
Yeah, the biggest, there's a few. The biggest one I see is not being intentional or focused. So not essentially what that means is not having goals, like true goals. And it could be professional and personal. It doesn't need to just be professional or business goals. Not having clarity of goals and not having a plan to get there. When you don't have a plan, you become reactive, and then you start to lose focus. You start to not be as intentional around what you're doing and why you're doing it. And we start to get a little afraid if things aren't going the way we want them to go. We have to do more. And when reality is no, we need to focus on the things that matter in alignment with our goals and what we actually desire in the future, whatever that is. And we just need to be intentional and have a plan. But if we wake up in the morning and don't know what that next step is, it's really hard to continue to take the right next steps. So we have to break things down. We have to understand what vision looks like as clear as possible and understand what we need to do to get there. Now, the plan never goes exactly as it's planned. That's okay. But we lean on our long-term vision. We lean on our good habits. We lean on our routines. And frankly, the most successful advisors that have figured out how to grow and scale and maintain some balance are typically the ones that are the most focused, are getting the most support, have a very clear vision, short-term, long-term vision, and they're making sure everyone around them understands it too. It's not just in their head. It's really like it's part of the culture and it's understood by everyone.
Yeah. And this is a little bit of, hey, let's not be the cobbler's children, the shoemaker's children. Like, let's have a plan so that we can run it. I could have taken exactly what you just said, walk it back, right? The biggest intention is to be focused, have a plan. Like, this is what advisors teach their clients. Here's our financial plan. We're going to do this for the long term. Yeah. Nothing's going to go as it's planned, but we're going to run with it. And here's our strategy. And here's how I'm going to support you. Like exactly what you just said, we could just change the wording, and advisors can sit here as they're listening and go, yep, you're right. I need to absolutely do that. Because this is exactly what they're feeding their clients. Otherwise, they walk around with a lot of guilt or possibly shame that we self-inflict because we know we have this cognitive dissonance that I know I need to have it. And I know I'm telling my clients every day to have it, but I don't.
Well, I can literally count on one hand the advisors that not only have like true, when I say goals, I don't just mean AUM revenue goals. It could be, but like they truly are like locked into their goals. They feel like they're passionate about it. There's alignment. There's true alignment with their values. Again, there could be personal, professional goals that have not only goals, have written down those goals in some sort of plan or some sort of written down formalized way, and feel like they're taking action toward them on some consistent basis. Very rarely I find someone, lots of people have a plan, they have goals, but they're not formalized, and especially not most advisors that I've worked with and talked to. If I woke you up at 4 a.m, would you know what you're doing that day? And the answer is usually no. Does your team know what they would be doing? What are the highest priorities? What is the focus? Could they articulate the same clear vision to me? And usually it's no. And that itself is game changing, I think, when you have that level of clarity. For myself, I have what I call, I stole it from a book. It's a concept in a book I read called Make Time. It's a productivity book. It was a really great book. And they had this idea of a highlight. So every day you have a highlight. It can only be one thing. What is the one thing that if nothing else happens, this one thing happens? And it's often something you're excited about, something you need to accomplish or you want to accomplish. And when I wake up and I can tell you my highlight is each day this week, I mentally already prepared. I feel good about it. I'm confident. I'm ready. I'm focused. And those things go really well. And oftentimes they're things I can get done early in the day. So I hit the ground running. Again, it's just having a very simple plan in place that I could wake up in the middle of the night and I would tell you what it is. Like, I know it. It's easy. It's not hard. It's not complicated.
Yes. This intentionality and this having this, again, it comes back to focus again of like, where are you? What are you actually trying to accomplish and do? It's funny. I had no idea that Make Time even existed.
It's good. I have
our business is the Make Time Institute. And I came up with that back in 2017 when we started the company and changed the name a little bit. We were doing other things for advisors, but we really focused, changed the name. And then when I went to write the book, I was going to call it Make Time. I'm like, oh, there's another book already called Make Time. So, we finessed the marketing. You're like, it's really about balance. That's really what time is all about. It's about balance. So super familiar with the work, and the principles are sound. Like, it's absolutely true. Like, you need to know where you're at. You need to know, if you're very productive, you're going to have the schedules, you're going to have the goals. But the majority of the advisors I work with, you're exactly right. They do not have formalized specific goals. They may have goals around AUM, how big their business is going to be. And that actually, when I ask them about goals, that's where they go to first. They're like spouting off business stuff, right? And that's when I know they're just way out of balance. Like, they don't have anything else. There's no depth to that person. I know they're good people, but there's usually not depth as far as their goals are concerned. So we start with the values, and then we prioritize them so that we know that where they're at. And this is where I hit on the middle section of the book. I do take a little bit of leniency to hit on productivity, because I was a straight up productivity coach for a long time. And I was helping this advisor, and he's like, Travis, thank you. I went from like 80-hour work week to 45, and this is a huge leap. And this is a guy with like 6 kids at home and a great family and a lot of things he claims to love and do outside of work. He was a workaholic. And he said, thank you for making me more productive. Now, what am I going to do when I get so productive and I saved all this time? What's going to keep me from not working more?
That struggle is real. Yeah.
It's real. So I write about it in the second part of the book, and we call these people productive workaholics, because this is the myth about productivity. And you and I can talk about this because, we're doing this all the time. If you have productivity with no boundaries, that's when you can still be a really great productive person who's a workaholic. You have no boundaries to keep you from just not working those 90 hours each week. What do you think the advisors you've worked with, the ones that you've helped maybe shift from being really, not productive to productive, what's been a boundary that's helped them or even helped you so that you don't just race on through and be a productive workaholic?
Yeah. Wow. I'm laughing over here because I can very much identify with that productive workaholic. I don't know if you know Strengths Finders, which is a behavioral assessment tool. Yep, my number 2 strength is, so it goes strategic. My second one is achiever. So I'm literally wired to want to achieve. So I can understand that workaholic mentality. And I think that, so the way that it's translated to advisors though, is so we talk about smart growth, and we talk about using metrics to understand how you're doing. So KPIs, key performance indicators, and there's obvious ones around growth, right? There's your year-over-year growth, there's productivity, there's revenue per team member, and we have all these things, and we have leading and lagging indicators we come up with. But the one that surprises people that I require them to, I can't force them to track it, but I very strongly suggest they track is their energy and their team's energy. And that, I think, is a really important signal. It's not your traditional business signal, but people's energy, your team's energy, your energy, you got to be honest with yourself. Are you burning out? Are you, so stress is, the overexerting beyond your capacity over an extended period of time. Are you doing that? are you burning yourself out? Because if the answer is yes, or even if the things you're doing, if they're draining you of your energy, guess what? It's not sustainable. So that, I think, is a really important metric that I encourage the advisors I work with to keep an eye on, and to ask, even a team meeting, how's everyone's energy this week? And be honest and allow, hey, listen, I'm exhausted. You got to be honest and create safety there for your team. And be honest with yourself. It's funny you brought up the dark side of productivity, because I was just talking to my husband about this, where I was so talking about how intentional that I am around focused time and creating and achieving the things I need to achieve, and very productive. And I'm like, and he actually brought up, he's like, well, when do you know when to stop? And I was like, oh shoot. I don't.
Right.
And so, that would, to me, was we were just walking this week and we had this conversation. To me, that was like a light bulb. Like, maybe there needs to be a threshold on when to stop too. And, certainly the energy, because to me, it's energizing to be productive. I love creating stuff.
Go, go, go. I'm so good at getting stuff done. And you get an instant reward of boom, boom, boom. It's a hit. It's a dopamine rush to the brain. And then that can be, I had Richard Kahler on. I keep calling him Kahler because it's the German pronunciation, but Rick Kahler on the show. And we talked about how he dropped a podcast on his podcast recently about workaholism. And he said, it's such an insidious response because we are rewarded almost instantly for what we're doing.
Right.
I think you're exactly right. Like, you go and you drink alcohol, and the next morning, if you have overdone it, you're an alcoholic, you're puking your guts out. You're like, why did I ever do that? But a lot of times people who are workaholics, like, they get consistent, instant reward. It's very hard to stop.
Yeah.
Very, very, very hard to stop. So you bring up a really good point. The other point you brought up indirectly, that I think this is my secret sauce, Shauna. This is my secret sauce. My secret sauce is your family. It is your spouse. Yeah. So I've done a lot of research on the PhD level, doctorate level, on family and human development. And we found that, at least in my dissertation work, that when couples are going the same direction, they have the same goals, same values, they're happier, they have a better marriage, and their finances are better. And it's kind of like, well, duh. We do a lot of duh research in family sciences. Okay. It's like, yes, that does help you if you serve each other. There's research out there. You're like, seriously, you had to research that? I'm like, yeah, we did. But I take it a step further. And in the book, I point out that when you develop together, when you're actually helping each other achieve each other's goals, like you're supporting, but then you have goals together and you have time outside of work that you look forward to it more than work itself, or at least the same level, like you enjoy it the same level. That's the boundaries that are going to be built into the schedule. And that's how you create them. At least for the clients we've worked with, it's been incredibly effective. Have you seen that yourself? Have you seen, like, yeah, when I set these boundaries, that it does work?
Yes. I mean, absolutely. I'm nodding my head as you're speaking, because absolutely. I think for me, having kids, so I have two daughters, I have 7 and 10-year-old daughters, and having kids was, honest to God, the best thing for me in finding balance. Because it forced you, when you get home from work, it's not really a choice. Like, they want and demand your attention, as they should. And having kids has just been the absolute best kryptonite to workaholism for me. And especially, frankly, during COVID, it was really, really hard, as it was for many, many people. But what we found is that we really were forced to figure out how to create more space for family. And it was incredibly rewarding. It's something that I took away and learned. I definitely learned was incredibly important to me. And so we've been really intentional about it. I mean, even earlier today, my youngest, both my kids are on spring break, and we were building a fort. We had 30 minutes. That's 30 minutes. We were building a fort together, and we had a blast, but I was like fully present. My phone wasn't with me. I had to disconnect, because otherwise it's so tempting. It's so tempting to reconnect. And we had a blast. We had a picnic on our porch, but I was able to do the things I needed to do for work and still do the things I needed to do for family, which to me, that's felt like balance, at least in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Yeah. COVID had a lot of downsides, but quite honestly, if you could make space for that family, if you realize that, yes, we need to make space for this, and you did it, I think everyone that I've talked to that has embraced it has been like, wow, that's been one of the best things ever for our family. I've heard that a lot. My wife and I, we still look back at 2020, like, hey, remember when we didn't have any responsibilities for like soccer or plays
It was
or
nice.
anything? We just traveled. We loved it. Now we homeschool our 7 children, and for a big, reason, we like the flexibility.
Yeah.
We love it. And we love being able to say, hey, what are we doing? What is our travel plans for next month? And because that's what lights our fire. And, not everybody's like that, and that's fine. We all are different. We have different tastes and different values and priorities. But for us, that whole experience was just like, hey, let's get out and travel because we can. And a lot of people did. Like, it became hashtag van life, right? Everybody did it. And now we didn't go to that extreme. We're not living out of a van. I'm not saying it is extreme, but we didn't go there. But we kind of did. Like, we road traveled everywhere, and it was a blast. So I'm with you. That's really cool that you had that time.
Well, and something you mentioned, so obviously family, but even I think for, I'll put myself in this bucket of rule follower, kind of, adhere to standard norms of what's expected around someone who's productive and high achieving. Like, I always want to be seen. I've always wanted to be kind of successful in that way. And I think a lot of advisors do too. Professionally, they want to be deemed as successful. And I think with COVID kind of really taking all the expectations around what does it look like to work, just throwing it out the window, you actually had to rebuild, what does that mean to me? And it's interesting. There was a stat that I read recently from Absolute Engagement around, it was high net worth investors. I think it was something like over 75%, around 75% of them felt like they could achieve what they needed to and were very happy with virtual meetings. So it's like, why do we assume, we adhere to these societal norms that aren't necessarily serving us, but we do it because we should. And, I think for a lot of advisors, just being able to change their business model and the way they engaged, with their clients, with their team members, with themselves and their families, it was probably a pretty unbelievable opportunity.
Amen. You nailed that. Absolutely. 100% agree. When Kit just interviewed me for his podcast at the beginning of this whole shutdown, we were talking about this norm of having to go to an office and what do we do and how do we work from home? And I've been doing this for years and years and years, and it was old hat, but I think you hit on something that's breaking these norms, these standard practices that we have to go in. We have to buy the Mercedes. We have to have this big, expensive, massive office to show everybody how successful we are as an advisor. Or can we just put a camera and talk to people face to face in our living room? It can be done.
And they're okay with it. They're okay with it for the,
and they're just fine. Like, that's brilliant. Brilliantly said. But the other thing that brings me back to is like, you're breaking norms at SEI. You're helping advisors take their business models, scale their growth, and really use practice management for good. Tell us what's going on at SEI and how, as SEI, as a partner with advisors, how does that help them to have greater balance?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So when I was considering making the transition as a business owner to an employee at SEI, one of the things that struck me was a lot of the clients I worked with they wanted to grow. They were paying me to help them grow as a consultant, as a coach, but they still didn't really have the resources. They still were at capacity. They still felt like they didn't have enough time to do the things they agreed they needed to do. And what I really love about SEI is that they partner with advisors. They're a custodian, but a lot of the advisors that work with them outsource aspects of their business. So investment management, for example, they had to have back and front office technologies. So there's a number of areas in their business that they can partner with SEI, and partnership is, frankly, I think, what we consider one of the drivers of growth. Like, you need to partner with people. It doesn't need to be a company like SEI. It could be. You need to partner to scale. It's just what it is. You can't do everything by yourself. And so I was just really excited to be able to work with advisors in the consulting capacity, but advisors that had the support or more support. So they actually had more capacity to work on the business and take action on the things that they really wanted to do, which was exciting. So yeah, SEI really does support advisors in different ways, depending on what their needs are. But obviously practice management's another way we support advisors, but it was really, it's that partnership, and it's not just services, it's the power, the people. Like it's pretty unbelievable. There was a story I heard recently of an advisor whose wife was very sick, and he needed to be there to take care of her. And some of his service members actually were able to step in and help run part of his business. So there's this, it's not just the services, it's the people too. It's a cultural thing that I really admire. Yeah,
really cool. I mean, as you explained it, very, very profoundly there in the pre-podcast show, is like, hey, we're the custodian, but we're also textodian. And I love that. Like, you provide the practice management on the back end. I know so many advisors, they really, really need this. Like, I'm in the trenches, helping them out of the workaholic trap. And a lot of it is done with practice management related tools. Yeah. So if there are advisors out there, or if there's advisors out there who are listening to this, listeners, if you're wanting to engage with Shauna and find out more about what they can do to provide the back end help, the textodian type of stuff, where should they go? Shauna, what's the best place for them to go and maybe get a feel for what you guys do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they can go to the website, which is SEIC.com. But what I would say is, if you want practice management help, we actually, part of joining, we have built and have actually launched on-demand actual practice management tool or product called the Growth Lab. And so that's something that any advisor can access. It's toolkits that myself and my peers in practice management have built based on our 40 plus combined years experience. So lots and like thousands of conversations with advisors. So that is something you can access. I'll give it to you the link so that I don't have to say the whole thing. It's pretty long. But the Growth Lab is a great place to go for practice management. And of course, I would say LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So I'm always sharing tips and best practices and tools and ideas and opportunities around high performance and practice management. So LinkedIn, and it's at Shauna Mace, is a good place to connect with me.
Love it. Thanks for being here. Thanks for giving back to the industry, letting us know what you guys provide there at SEI. More importantly, really just helping this balanced advisor movement go forward. We're all part of it. And we just really loved hearing you. I speak we as in all of us listening, but I'm part of you. Like, I'm listening along while I'm answering these questions. It's a phenomenal experience being the host, but I just had a great time. I had a great time talking to you, and I hope that everyone else did too. Please like, share, comment, get this message out to help other advisors who are struggling with balance in any form or fashion. I think you gain a lot from Shauna's advice here on the show. So thanks, Shauna.
Thank you so much for having me. This is fun.